Very good, thank you. Well, welcome to the Committee of the Whole meeting for Lacombe City Council. It is Monday, April 15th, promptly at 5:28 p.m. I'll call the meeting to order. A relatively light but important meeting nonetheless. If we could have a motion for the agenda, please. Councillor Dallas.
Well, thank you, Mayor Creasy. Motion to accept the agenda as presented.
Thank you very much. All those in favor? Oh, we've got electronic voting too. Wonderful. Please go ahead and vote in that case. That will come up green. I was going to say there was only 4 green marks, but I think for argument's sake, we're going to say that it was 5 in favor. So unanimously, we'll get that technical glitch cleaned up for the recording of the minutes at least. And we'll move into reports to committee. Like I said, the one item for the 2024 strategic plan update session. CEO Gowdy, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. So this evening we have a little bit of
You're mean.
could have taken the opportunity to vote there. Okay, thank you for that. So it's a little bit less of a formal meeting. The rules of order still apply, but there is going to be probably some silent time while council's inputting some of their answers onto our survey. And so if anyone's joining us electronically, there might be a little bit less of an interesting meeting from that standpoint. We're 2 years, actually we're 2.5 years into the term, but about 2 years into your strategic plan. And so we're taking this opportunity to do a little bit more fulsome of a review. I know that engagement coordinator Vaughn and yourselves had talked about some possible changes to the way we do this kind of midterm review. And one of the requested amendments was to have this strategic plan meeting at a committee meeting. So here we are this evening. In terms of the process, what we'll be doing is Coordinator Belbono has sent out by both teams, and it should be at the top of your email inbox, a link to a survey in Microsoft Forms input format. That's going to, as we go through these items, I'm going to give a brief highlight of what the item is. There'll be an opportunity to ask any questions to clarify your understanding of the item. We aren't looking for significant debate or discussion on the item itself, but sort of like making sure we have a common understanding of what we're talking about. And then you'll provide your input on that item through the form. And it's kind of like a 1 to 4 rating system, with 1 being basically like, it's not really something I want to see resources going towards right now, because we're talking about very limited resources. And 4 being, this is something I would really like to see happen before the end of the term. This is really important. I'd like to see our resources put towards that. Given that there is 18 months left in the term, I want to be realistic with you about our shared ability to progress and complete 24 pages of items. We're not going to get all of the things complete. That has been, of course, I think this council has been very understanding since the beginning of the strategic planning process, that this is about directing resources in the goal of achieving priorities for council. It's not all of these things are going to get done, that everything on this list is going to get done within the term. So as much as it might be difficult the default, if you really want to make progress on your most important items, the default as we go through here, you should be saying, it's not a current priority actually to more of the items than you're saying, that's a real big priority to me. Because we are more than halfway done the term. And I think we had looked and maybe there was 61 items in the completed register, something like that. 60. And we've got 65 or so, plus the 3. Somewhere between 60 and 70 items. So typically you're going to get the easier stuff done first in the term to begin with. Plus, we're more than halfway through. So I think just please keep that in mind as we go through. The other thing I will say, there is about 60 items. So if we spend about a minute per item was my goal on average, some will be more, some will be less. And that should be around an hour that this takes us. If we go to 2 minutes, it's more than 2 hours and so on up there. So it's not to try and rush anyone, but to say we are going to keep it moving. And I talked to Mayor Creasy, and specifically in this case, more importantly, Chair Creasy, who's going to be making sure we stay moving as well. So thank you for that. Any question on the process, and is everyone able to pull up that sheet? We were anticipating that you would pull up the rating sheet, except for anyone who's done it beforehand. You actually could just focus on what I'm talking about and ask some questions. But the rest would have that up on their electronic device, and then we'll be going through and have this up for everyone on the screen. So if there is anyone who is having difficulty accessing the forms, communication coordinator Vaughn is able to help. He's here to support you. If at any point you need some technical support, just put up your hand and let us know, and we'll get someone up here to help you right away.
Councillor Connick.
So it's the council reading.
Yes. But if you've already done it, you should not do it again, because it will throw the ratings off.
And so that's available either through Teams or via email, and that's the one there on there. Exactly.
Yeah.
If I could interrupt, one thing I did forget to mention, a couple of empty chairs here from council members, both of which send their regrets, councillors Ross and Gullickson. For anybody watching, they will still have an opportunity to have their voices heard. However, it will not be this evening. Councillor Connick.
Just on the email, it says, so I did this because it didn't say I,
It says to do it ahead of time. This is.
sorry.
This is the one.
Councillor Connick.
I think Councillor Hibbs is pointing out what I had. The crowdsource one says Monday night, the other one doesn't. So I did the other one. But you're telling me that's the one I can just sit and watch now, correct?
Yes. So my reversed.
So Councillors Dallas and I were correct. Thank you.
Yes. So apologies for that. I think a previous version went out. Is what has happened, but no problem. It doesn't matter. If you can go to the one that says 2024 strategic plan update for Lacombe City Council, and it talks about what high priority, medium priority, low priority, and not a priority mean, and then starts off with a ranking the following strategic plan tactics from growing the community, collaborating with community stakeholders on community economic development. Please let me know once you have been able to access that page. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Apologies for the confusion there. Again, it actually no problem at all. There will be an opportunity to both put in ideas and to provide your rating if you haven't already. So we will begin.
So, see, I have to throw a wrench into things. are we under the impression that perhaps some of the counselors that were away have chosen to do this, or if is there any way, if it's individuals who are attending this evening, that we could wipe those out and start them fresh so they could participate as we go along, or is that not possible?
It is possible. Just give me one moment here. If we could take a 5-minute recess, it is possible, and we'll get a new link out to you right away.
Okay, and before I say that, obviously with that confusion, I just think it might make for a better participation if everyone here is going through the process at time
Yes.
for anyone that, is there anyone that does not wish to have that happen?
Get that in. It's easy enough to do that.
It is easy enough to do. It would take us 5 minutes.
I think it might be worth it in this case. If it's possible, that would be great. Thank you. So we will take a short 5-minute recess then. Very good. I think we're ready to resume. The technical difficulties have been addressed and we're ready to go. CEO Gowdy, whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you very much. So, we'll begin. You should have a growing community, creating an environment. Development. Thank you, Councillor Dallas. Item number 1 is to collaborate with the Downtown Area Redevelopment Plan Committee to implement recommended projects. The next project, of course, is the 49C Pedestrian Plaza. I believe that is being delivered in 2 phases, with the first phase hopefully starting later this year. Final costing was approved for the downtown branded sidewalks as well, and those are going along on Main Street. Are there any questions about this scope of work? If not, please go ahead and put in your input, and I will wait a few seconds before moving on to the next one.
CEO Gowdy, so that was for all 5 of those items?
No, just for the
Or
first
just
one.
for the one? Okay.
The next one is the Rotary Crana Lake proposal. This is the Lacombe Rotary Group has a proposal for a recreation amenity at or near the Crana Lake trailhead. And we have collaborated with the Lacombe Rotarians to create a bit of a project plan. And they're just determining when they would like to bring that proposal to council. It's largely in the Rotarians' hands at this point. Any questions there? Not seeing anything. I'm going to move to item number 3, which is the downtown parking inventory and consultation. We have done an inventory and a citizen priority survey. A page with an infographic is complete, highlighting sort of the desired amenities and where they rank in terms of parking importance in the downtown. And there is a remaining task that is to continue making sure we consider the balance of parking when we're looking at changes in the downtown, to make sure that the feedback we've received, which is parking is the priority over other amenities, is reflected in the decisions that we're recommending to council. Any questions there?
I'll just go ahead.
Go
So I was curious how often people complain about parking, like not the businesses, but the citizen. Like, I don't know, because I don't hear about it much lately. But Guy's listening.
I wouldn't say you hear a ton of it from the citizens directly. It is feedback that we get from businesses in the downtown that that's something they really see as a priority, because they're hearing it from their customers, or they're inferring that from their customers. And so whenever we do work in the downtown, that's a real topic of discussion of what's the balance. Are we increasing? Are we decreasing? We did make some changes last year that increased parking, and we wanted to kind of preserve the credit of that by taking a point in time, so that when we are making changes to the downtown in the future, we can say, well, you know, we actually created 7 back here and we lost 2, then we made 3 more, and sort of tell that story of, hey, we're trying to balance it where we can.
I think quite often we expect to receive negative comments when it comes to parking, and quite the opposite with angled parking on, which street is it?
49,
49th
right, by Dutchess.
Avenue,
49B.
49B. I've had several people comment that that was a very positive move. So let's keep that in mind too. It's not always just bad things with parking.
So we want them to remember that when we make that impact parking negatively. Yeah, that is not negative. Mayor Creasy and you and I were talking about the next one earlier today, the Lacombe Lodge. This says information and current files. Really, I think that part of the project is complete. We have comprised those documents that summarize sort of the state of things. We had talked about what the best way to move our advocacy efforts forward were there. I don't know if you're speaker.
Well, and then that was going to be my question on this one. And I think that that work, as it's outlined here, has been done. I wouldn't suggest that that file is completed by any stretch of the imagination. So will this item revolving around the Lacombe Lodge show up anywhere else?
No, this is, I'm sorry.
Or by answering, this will suggest a continuation of those efforts or perhaps an enhancement of them?
Yes, what I would see would be this moving to creating a plan for advocacy, for interregional advocacy officially to the government on this. I think we tried a few measures sort of ad hoc over the last year, and there was some benefits, but it hasn't moved the project along. So if we saw this ranked highly from council, we would want to bring you an advocacy plan that was supported by external consultants that specialize in that.
That answers my question very well, because I think that there is demonstrated a clear need for some additional help and resources on this particular file, because while we've certainly raised awareness within our community and spoken with a lot of government officials, we haven't really got the traction that it really does deserve, in my opinion. So I would certainly be pleased to see this show up as a high priority, so that we can perhaps funnel some additional resources and get some other, hopefully get some other parties on board as well.
All right, so please provide your input there. And then I will be moving on to item number 5. Item 5 is a collaboration between the City of Lacombe, Echo Lacombe, and the City Lacombe District Chamber of Commerce. That is the Lacombe Bucks, or sort of a buy local gift card that works within local businesses here in Lacombe. Echo did apply on behalf of the program for a provincial grant. Unfortunately, we have just recently heard back that it wasn't successful this year. So we're following up to see how we could maybe bolster that in the future. And I know Echo is also looking at if there's a different path to make it happen. So the city's not really taking a primary role there, but when we wrote this, we did have hopes that it would be going ahead as planned. So if you have questions, we can answer those or provide your input now. Moving into the second division within the growing the community area is strengthening conditions for investor attraction, the attraction of regional events being the first, and the status update being there that we have the Lacombe Days concert to look forward to. And I've most recently heard that the Pan American Continental Curling Championship is still headed for Lacombe. So we do have a couple of events coming up that we do plan to support, regardless of your input here. But we'd like to hear your priority for attracting other events and whether you see that as something. And if you can go to the thank you, to the next, and one more. If there's questions there, we can answer those, or please provide your input. I'll move to the next. The next is updating the municipal development plan and area structure plans to ensure conditions for investor attraction. Project has started. We plan to bring some scoping options to council later this year with a draft municipal development plan progress report on the existing policies also underway. We are looking for where you place priority on an MDP update. And if you recall, the main things in the municipal development plan, the real meaty part is what your density targets are. So right now they're 15 units per hectare. That was raised in the last municipal development plan, but many municipalities have actually increased beyond that as well. So I'll give you a minute there. And then I'll be moving to a report to committee outlining possible future planning considerations for the redevelopment of 50th Avenue. So you have already approved a study in 2024 that looks at the Highway 12 and 2A intersection and looks at what might be some long-term plans for the municipality there. It has been identified for a number of years that 50th Avenue will become a pressure point for traffic in the future. There are some locations right now where it is a bit. And there has been talk of closing off accesses to properties, creating side roads. You can see that in Edmonton where there's sort of delineated side residential access roads and then the main road. Is that something the municipality wants to do here? Or what is the long-term plan for 50th Avenue would be what we're asking here. Is that something you want to spend time thinking about during the remainder of the term? Or is that maybe a priority for the next term or somewhere down the road?
CEO Gowdy, I wonder if you could just remind anybody watching and perhaps council of what the long-term outlook is for the bypass road to the south of the city, because I think that's nice to be able to plan within the city. I think we still have to offer viable methods for traffic, especially truck traffic, to bypass that area. So it kind of goes hand in hand. I know it's not listed as there, but I think that's an important point.
So we have been working, as council knows, we have been working on the South Ring Road Collector alignment project with the county and other impacted stakeholders. Council did provide some direction on finalizing an alignment there recently in camera. And so we're doing that. We're finalizing the report, and there will be a report back to council publicly discussing the selected alignment and what those implications might be for the Ring Road. The next one is a
I had a question.
I'm sorry.
Just building on the mayor's point, like when I saw this, we've done significant redevelopment of 50th Ave, especially in the downtown core. Wouldn't this be more about, when did the traffic master plan? We haven't looked at that in ages. Like, I'm just wondering if that's more of because that would then encompass the Ring Road and other. I believe the traffic master plan says we're supposed to twin Highway 50 or 50th Ave all the way through the city or something. The original one. So I'm wondering if that is a better focusing on redeveloping or looking at that as opposed to just 50th. I don't know. I'm just.
I don't think the two are mutually exclusive. The transportation master plan really talks about where you'll see pressures given the existing road conditions and projected growth patterns. It doesn't necessarily suggest cross-sectional improvements. It will talk about when intersection improvements are required for specific intersections. And it will talk about when level of services are become unacceptable on roadway corridors. But it doesn't say when that happens, knock out the 2 parking lanes and put in driving lanes there and you'll be good. That's a further level of analysis beyond what the transportation master plan goes to. So you're right. I think that last time the TMP was updated was 2017, 13. So that is something that, if that is more of a priority, that overall system analysis, it is out of date. You're right. I shouldn't say it's out of date. It is, it's getting dated. It's over 10 years for sure. This one, though, is really about a cross section. I think you'd probably see like block by block cross sections that would go along 50th. Probably not in the downtown actually as a focus because there's not really a lot of options there. This would be east and west of the downtown. The next item is to develop a film-friendly policy for council's consideration. This is about attempting to attract the film industry to Lacombe. It's a collaboration that our community services department has been working with Red Deer Polytechnique for some time. And actually, I believe the ball is in their court right now. We're just waiting for information back from them. Any questions? No, please provide your input and I will move on. The next one is a land use bylaw amendment. This is actually a new proposal we've included here from administration. It is a request that we've had from our realtors who are representing land for us, for example, Len Thompson, phase 2, that they get quite a bit of inquiries about having office space in the light industrial area. And they wanted to acknowledge to us that there is a lot of office use going on in the light industrial area. It may not be always the primary purpose of the building, but often it is a significant component already. And so we had talked about it internally and talked with our realtor that this is something they would see as making that land more marketable. This isn't to say you will do it. This is to say if this is a priority, we would prioritize bringing a request for decision to council on this item.
Councillor Dallas.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. In regards to this, I guess, do we have an inventory of undeveloped commercial space that would be suitable for this? Or do we know if there's just kind of a lack of available commercial space for this type of use?
We don't. We don't have an inventory of available land in that way. Not just for commercial, we actually don't have one residential that's kept up to date or industrial.
Thank you.
Councillor Hibbs.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. So just to clarify, so this would be with the intention of light industrial being like more specifically for office use and not for a typical light industrial use. Is that my understanding then? As opposed to just being an accessory use? Yeah, so it would be looking at office space as a, I suppose it could be permitted or discretionary use within the is it I1 or I2? It's I1. Thank you. Thank you.
So just so that we're not confused here, so this is in light industrial?
Yes.
And that's in the I1 area or I2?
I believe it's I1 because I always mix it up and assume I1 is heavy, but yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
thank you.
I1 is the light.
May I? To follow up.
Councillor Straight, yeah.
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. So are these lots not selling because they can't have office space? Is that the implication? Like, would we have sold lots if this had been changed? Like, I mean, it makes sense that it could be changed, but is it a priority? I guess that's what I'm not telling
I
you
think
what to
it's-
tell me. But
I think it's, yeah, I think that would be a hard one to either prove or even to suggest. However, I think it's seen as something that would be beneficial moving forward and remove a little red tape and perhaps expedite the approval process. Is that
Yeah,
fair?
that's right. I mean, our realtors tell us they've had inquiries from people who are looking to set up office space, ask about that land, are told, no, it's not suitable for that. And so they say, oh, okay, well. So to say, well, it would have turned into sales, I'm not sure there, but there wasn't. It's a roadblock that currently exists if someone wanted to set that up in I1. Which may be for good reason. Maybe you don't want it in I1. It dilutes the commercial zoning, that sort of thing. That, again, this wouldn't be to say, you say this is a priority and it's happening. This would be to come to you and say, well, here's what we think.
Yeah. And I think we need to acknowledge the fact that it does exist already there.
Yes, very much
So
so.
it's not like this is that new. And it's not like we've been particularly opposed to it occurring in the past. Councillor Connick.
And that was gonna be my point, because it's already occurring. It's not even about those bare lots. It's more acknowledging that it already occurs, so why not have it as a permitted use? Because we're already having, and there are other lots that are not bare that it's come up to where there's been some interest, but because it's not a permitted use, the buyer walks away.
Okay. The next item is updating the LUB for red tape reduction and clarity improvements. So specifically home occupation, the definition of home occ 1, and the enforcement strategy around CCANs. So staff have created an updated, a list of updates that they think would provide some assistance. It has not advanced this project. And so we wanted to see if this is something that council sees as a priority right now.
Don't mind me, I'm thinking. Councillor Connick.
I don't know if my light was on before Councillor Dallas or not, but do we not have, I thought it was pretty clear on CCANs. Are you saying it's not anymore? Like, sorry, no, I'm all for clarity. It's fair, we spend so much time on the land use bylaws, and it's just as much on noise bylaw but anyways, it's all good.
Director Thompson, would you be able to?
Certainly can. I just need a moment to read through them again.
Very good. While you're doing that, we'll go to Councillor Dallas.
Thank you. Sorry, there was the comment that the staff have made a list of items and then it just hasn't gone forward. Does that mean it hasn't gone from staff to this level, or council has been less than receptive to some of the changes? Oh.
Thank you. From staff compiling a list, probably bullet point, kind of rough list, into here's some amendments that would make these happen, and a council RFD.
Okay. Thank you.
So with respect to the land use bylaw red tape, I don't think anybody here is looking to cause more red tape and is all in favor of clarity. But as far as making it a high priority, I'm not really sure that. Basically, I'm trying to give you an out here, Director Thompson, but if you've got information for us, please go ahead with it.
I do. It'll just be brief. CCANs is one example of where this task was implemented in the past. What this says what this means in practice is that staff are always looking for ways to improve the bylaw, and right now they're compiling a list. And once we have enough of a critical mass of little improvements here and there throughout the bylaw, we will assemble them as a kind of an omnibus bylaw amendment to bring forward to council for consideration. And that's an active thing that's happening all the time, mainly because council said that it's a priority for them. So if that's something that should continue to happen, then indicate that it's a priority. If that's something that council's happy with the bylaw as it is right now, then we won't spend time and resources towards compiling all of that information actively.
Right. I guess I just don't want to lead council astray on suggesting that we don't want to hear from any department over ways to improve service in the community. But to say that it's priority one to come up with a lengthy list for consideration is kind of the pendulum at the other end of the spectrum, where that doesn't hardly make sense either. So this one's a bit of an interesting one for me anyway. Councillor Hoekstra.
Thank you. I guess that's what I wanted to echo is that, yes, keep compiling the list, but I don't know if it's a priority to get it to us over something else. Like I would find that unfortunate if suddenly that knowledge that, oh, this could be tweaked a bit is suddenly discarded. I like that idea that there's a critical mass and then maybe bring it forward, but is it a priority in the next 18 months? That would be something different, but please don't discard what you've accumulated.
So you can take that into consideration when you're looking at the compiled data.
Done. The next one is the enhanced highway signage for Lacombe. So this is kind of like the number of mentions that Lacombe gets on Highway 2 signage. And actually it's in the works, it's in the queue. I would say if council does not see it, says, this isn't a huge priority for me right now, it's still going to happen. If you say, actually, this is a top priority for me, then we're going to use every meeting we get with the Minister of Transportation and staff to say, hey, what's happening with that thing? And that's really the range of prioritization we're looking at on this task. It really is in queue already.
Councillor Connacht.
So when you say enhanced signage, I'm just wondering, like when I come from Red Deer, I see the sign, Combe. Like, I'm just wondering what.
So it should be mentioned on every sign between Edmonton and Lacombe. It should say Lacombe 45 kilometers.
Oh, I see.
Or whatever.
That signage.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
QE2 stuff. Yep.
Okay.
And so it is lacking actually north of us. There should be like 4 more signs with it or something.
Okay. No, thank you for that clarification because I wasn't sure what you're going. Thank you.
Councillor Hoekstra.
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. I'm speaking on behalf of Don. This is his thing. And I know that even coming from Red Deer, I believe there's a sign that it says Stettler, but it does not say Lacombe.
Yeah, there's something.
So I would say it's a priority.
Okay, so please put your rating in. The next one is specifically the 49C concept in DARP. We have these separated out. The previous one was really about kind of some of those smaller items. So things like crosswalk improvements and little smaller investments. This is the specific project of 49C. Again, that's supposed to be a 2-phase implementation. The first phase, maintaining traffic flow, pausing for see how it is, see how it's going, and then possibly moving to a completely pedestrian plaza. The province did approve a northern rural economic development grant for the maximum amount of $200,000 to support this project. So we are seeing phase 1 in council's plan already, or capital budget.
Councillor Connacht.
So I'm just a little confused now again. It's in the budget over 2 years, like it's approved. But then you said possibly. So is it not going to happen? Like, I thought we committed to this, I guess, is what I'm trying to clarify.
The first phase is committed to. There is a possibility of a second phase. We had talked about doing it in 2 steps. The first being, can you help me with the scope of phase 1 and what elements are included there?
Yeah, again, as you said, we're not taking away from traffic flow. So anything outside of the traffic flow, so the bulb outs, and then we're looking for some additional traffic flow improvement on 49B. It's pretty much the scope of it at this point.
Go ahead.
Sorry, but it's in the next year's budget for the second phase already. Okay.
Yes, that's true. We want to provide an opportunity to make sure that it's going, achieving council's intended goals before you make the final decision to include it in your capital budget for next year, which has not yet been approved, to make sure you want to go that final step. Next one is the attraction of national building. For council to do first. How much of a priority this remains? I would say on the, it's not currently a major priority end of the spectrum. We would kind of take a business as usual approach and hope that either Canadian Tire or some other national retailer chooses to make a presence in Lacombe. If it is a major priority for council over the next 24 months, then we would, we had talked about actually taking the step to go to the, there's a commercial retail unit conference in Western Canada, I think in Whistler, that we would go and have a presence, the city would have a presence there and try some of those sort of untried methods that if this is a priority, we'd like to try some new things. Next, I'm going to be moving into managing the community's resources. The first division there is to manage the city in a fiscally the goal there is to manage the city in a fiscally responsible manner. And the first division, if you can move ahead, Coordinator Balabono to the next page, is sustainable infrastructure, with the first item being expansion of the asset management plan to include at least one additional asset class. Project is underway, and we are looking at ways to improve the water distribution data. I'd like to know how much this expansion of the asset management program is a priority for council. Next up is continuing to fund road maintenance sustainably. Council has done this, actually made a lot of advancements in the last few years by using the 1% special paving tax to apply to a citywide project and increasing the roads reserve contributions by about $175,000 a year. We are just checking in to make sure that's still something that's a priority for council, or if it's something we should be reallocating those funds to in some other way, or the growth of reserve contributions.
Councillor Hoekstra, I missed your late there at one point in time.
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. I just wanted a clarification of, so what did it say there, the assets? To add at least one additional asset class. Can you just list what asset class we are covering now? Classes of assets, whatever.
So what the most recent asset management plan that we've developed is one for the roads, the road network. The one that we are focused on currently, and it's about 60%, 70% completed, is the water distribution system in Lacombe. And a couple that are in the queue that are kind of next in line would be our tree system in the community and managing our canopy, our green canopy, as well as facilities and buildings, looking at tackling that. And then depending on the results of the inflow and infiltration study, looking at our sanitary sewer collection network in the community.
Moving ahead is the construction of a public works facility. I would say the bandwidth between low and high priority here is very, very tight. It's going ahead. It's a high priority. regardless of your input here, it's gonna be seen through. So I guess please go ahead and provide your input, but know that that one's got its own momentum that isn't gonna be swayed.
Councillor Conick?
So why is it on here? Just-
A lot of the things that are taking the cities, what are typically outside of the normal resources. So taking up your capacity for projects, we want to acknowledge those in the strategic plan and just note that they are happening and they're moving ahead. In this case, pragmatically, because it was in the last strategic plan, it's showing up here because it's not completed yet. It hasn't been moved to the completion. So it's just in that kind of weird limbo stage where it's been a priority. It remains a priority. It's not quite complete yet. The next one is similar in project size, but earlier in the project life cycle, and that's the building of a fire hall. Of course, we're waiting for some land information right now. And we just wanted to confirm that that's still something council sees as a priority.
Councillor Conick?
So without elaborating too much, have we got some answers on the various, why is it taking so long? Isn't it a simple question or?
No, unfortunately, we're waiting for a response from a third party. And we have yet to hear anything. So please provide your input now. And that's one that I'm pretty sure we can anticipate where you'll be, but we wanted to confirm anyway. Trail asset prioritization is the next one. So this would be looking at really it is asset management for the trail system and making sure that we're investing the right amount for council's desired service level in the trails. All right. The urban forest management strategy is also one that Director Thompson alluded to as a possibility for the next asset class of asset management. So council did receive a presentation on the existing inventory of the urban forest. And so right now we're looking at doing some internal work actually to make a replacement plan, an asset maintenance plan that way. We had actually gone out to an RFP to look for an external consultant, but it weren't great responses. So we're looking to complete that work in-house over the next couple of years with our current prioritization. If council says actually it's a big priority, we'll go back out to look for some external consulting support. If you say actually it's not a priority for us right now, put this on the back burner and probably focus more on the trail asset prioritization side.
I guess that was gonna be my question, but if, depending on how we answer these ones, does it suggest that that is somehow more important than some of the hard assets like wastewater, asset management, or street lights, or whatever the ones that perhaps haven't been done yet? Because I wouldn't expect that it would be, but perhaps I'm wrong. But it's just difficult when some of those other items don't appear. It makes
this is
the answering of this a little more impactful.
This would be the completion of a plan. Because it is in the community services division, it's not the exact, it's not like one-to-one capacity that if you say, well, I want my 100 units of work going to this, it doesn't mean there's 100 less for water, for example.
Okay.
I would say here you're looking more between trail asset prioritization and urban forest management would be more of a impacted by one another's priorities. The next item, moving on to page 8, is the City Hall renovation project. Council didn't approve funding for the 2024 budget. We do have some existing budget that we're looking at right now. As council's aware, there's been some back and forth. We had some pre-qualified submissions that were too high in price. We looked at an internal plan for accommodation of staff, and we're just kind of looking at that right now of what a pared back sort of minimal scope project would look like. However, we wanted to check in with council and see, is that something you support moving ahead with anything, or is this something you'd like to see moved, into the back burner? And just see where you're at with it. Any questions? We certainly can answer those.
I don't see any.
So moving on to item number 8, bathymetric survey of storm ponds. So this is an item that was proposed for the 2024 operating budget. This is an item within the utilities department that would look at sort of asset maintenance obligations for the city's storm ponds. And it's specifically for storm ponds, not the pipes or ditches. And it looks at doing a survey of the ground surface in the city's storm ponds to say, where has sedimentation occurred, how fast is it occurring, and what are we going to need to do in terms of dredging to maintain the capacity of those storm ponds in the long term. It hasn't been something Lacombe has had to deal with a lot yet. If you look at other communities, they do require maintenance, and right now we don't have a good handle on what our maintenance obligations are. So this is something that was suggested internally to get an idea of what the backlog of work is and when we're going to have to start making investments.
I was curious with this item, do we have any historic data to compare this to, or is this the first of? And
First of.
And so for some of the newer ones, then we would have those, but.
Yes, sorry,
Okay.
that's what I was going to say.
And it says storm ponds. Part of our storm system is Wolf Creek. Would that be a part of this study as well?
That was not seen to be part of this study, as that would be a different style of surveying. That they do cross sections along the way. This is really like, I think a guy with a boat who's kind of measuring down to the bottom at various spots.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Next, we're into sustainable service levels as the division of this area. And the first item up is to establish organizational service levels. This has been put off a couple of times. This is really defining the service levels that the municipality offers within the community in various areas, typically maybe 100 or 150 different services, and how they're delivered, to what standard they're delivered. It is something that's been in a couple of strategic plans. It hasn't received funding to this point, and so we wanted to see where council lies. So if it's not a priority, it isn't something that will come up for the remainder of the term. If it is a priority, then we'll be making a suggestion in the 2025 operating budget deliberations to bring in some outside support to help us deliver this.
Councillor Hoekstra.
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. I guess on that one, I wanted to hear from you whether it's a priority. Because sometimes it's easy for us as council to say, well, we don't think that's important, but is this something that is hindering your work when you don't have a good review in place?
It hasn't, not for us. There are municipalities who I can see the benefit of how they're using it, where they have well-established service levels. Then they can come to council and say, well, where do you want to make changes with, in these services? The problem is from what I see, it's one thing to desire service level changes, but without having an attached dollar figure, you're making changes in the absence of information. So it kind of all ties back to this dollar capacity anyway. And I've seen us as a group effectively managing service levels through the budget mechanism. There are municipalities that look at service levels first and then determine what the budgetary implications are. But you can then be building up expectations for service levels that might not be achievable within your budget. So short answer is no, we haven't seen it. It would be helpful, and there's certainly times it would be nice to be able to point to and say, well, actually, here's the service level. It's not just standard practice, it's what we have written down and endorsed. But I haven't seen it as a super critical thing. The next one is a review of the city's cybersecurity strategy. We have done an internal review of cybersecurity vulnerabilities, but we are seeing increased vulnerabilities being exploited in the industry, and it can be quite destructive, disruptive and damaging. And so if council is concerned, if that's something you see concerns on, we would, if it is a priority, we would look at bringing in an external sort of gatekeeping tester, would then look at our system, make recommendations, and we would also work with AB Munis to look at making sure we have effective insurance in place. But to get that insurance requires you to be taking some best practice steps within your own municipality, which we currently don't meet all of. If it's not a priority, we do carry some cybersecurity insurance, and we have good folks working on it. It's not like we're loose to the world, and we would just continue with that, with where we're at right now.
It's kind of refreshing to hear, because this is a highly technical item that, I'm certainly not well versed in it enough to even comment on it. I would almost wondering if this shouldn't be referred back to administration for some input. If there's areas in which they're lacking, then yes, we expect them to be brought forward and we will address them. However, this is not target number one in the cyber world either. We need to be reasonable about it, but I'm just not really sure how much direction council is either prepared or willing to give in this item. Nobody wants to get in trouble, but we don't want to spend $1 billion making us the most secure municipality on earth either. I don't know.
So I guess that's kind of do you want us to do our best and we have good people who look at this kind of stuff? Or do you want us to be above the average, better protected than the average municipality of our size in our region? And if it's a priority that we be better than the average, we can do that. If it's not, we're already doing that.
Fair enough.
Okay. The next one is the Reservoir D needs analysis and feasibility study. This is something that has been deferred a couple of years actually, and it's to look at the city's the siting, the sizing, the hydraulics of the next water distribution station here in the city of Lacombe. And we are hoping that there's an opportunity to collaborate with Lacombe County to do sort of an interregional pumping and reservoir storage solution that would kind of meet both of our needs. And right now the functional design most recently has been deferred to 2025, and then future construction has been pushed out as well. So on the status quo, not a current priority, we will continue with the 2025 and place no special urgency on it. If it's a major priority that you say, well, actually water security is, and I'm hearing about that in the news, I want to be ahead of that, then rate it a high priority, and we will propose moving it up to a faster delivery if need be.
Counselor Dallas.
Thank you. Reservoir D, would that be on the west side of the city or is it the north?
The west side.
West, okay, thank you.
The next item is a partner agency service inventory. So this is something we've been working with Macomb Police Service for some time, and we are working on a draft one for the Mary Seymour Library. It's coming along. I would say it is more work than we had initially thought. It's just like it is quite a bit. There's a lot of interdependency between the police agency and the city of Macomb, and the library and the city of Macomb. And so just really identifying those services that are provided each way has been kind of time consuming, but pretty valuable. If this is it's not a particular priority right now, then we'll continue kind of picking away at those as time permits, with LPS being completed this year and Mary Seymour probably starting this year. If it's a priority of council and you provide that feedback, we'll get this one done with LPS in the next couple of months, and then make sure to get the one with Mary Seymour Library done this year, and then actually probably move into one with FCSS and some of the other agencies that we work with in 2025.
Counselor Hoekstra.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Was the purpose of this inventory to quantify what services, like not quantify, like put a value on the services that we share? Like what was the ultimate purpose of this?
Yeah, I think initially there was some element of that. That there was talk of, you remember there was like some LPS felt they were paying a lot for IT. We said, well, IT services, that's not actually all that's covered by that fee. It's all sorts of things. And they said, well, what sorts of things? It'd be nice to know what those are. So I think that was kind of the seed of it, but that's kind of fallen by the wayside, I would say. Maybe with the library, I could see that being more of an element, or FCSS, just to quantify those in-kind contributions you're making to those services. But it's certainly not a cost recovery exercise. It is, if I'm using the LPS one, for example, Chief Bloomhagen and I were recently talking about, it'd be nice when this is done, because then someone new on either side of us can come in and have an idea of what they can expect from the other person. And it's not just, going, what have we done before? Or what have they done before? You're actually saying, well, this is what we currently do. Do you want to change that? It's a basis for discussion for the future. And so I could see benefit for that with all the city's partners that we provide services. The next one is parking lot opportunities. So currently the city's looking at one submission it's received. That is in the works. And I would say the variance between not a big priority right now and a big priority would be, if it's not a big priority, we will let the proponent for the city's parking lot really lead those discussions and take more of a passive role in the timelines. If it is a priority for council, then we'll make sure that those timelines are moving along, and if need be, kind of take a lead role in some of them from time to time. Moving to the next item is public signage for capital projects. Council did approve $5,000 for 2024 for larger capital projects. And I know we are looking at public signage and actually a variety of public notification things to make sure people are seeing the value of their capital projects in their community. Here, priority simply means how much capacity are we allocating of, say, our marketing coordinator and our communications coordinator to this project? Is it we're spending the $5,000 and once it's out, that's good, see how it goes? Or is it really make sure this is successful, whether it's 5,000 or 5,000 plus a lot of staff time and see it through that way? Next, I'm moving into sustainable funding. Their council's got a goal. Well, the goal is sustainable funding. One of the items is the development of an infill levy for council's consideration. So I think most people understand the concept of an infill levy. It's to account for increasing density and what the impact there might be on offsite infrastructure or even infrastructure adjacent to the property. So paving lanes, upsizing sewers, installing storm sewers where there isn't any, or maybe even lighting improvements in older areas. This has been in the works for some time. Councillor Jacobson had advocated for an infill levy and even made a resolution in support of one time, a notice of motion. It's been tough to progress. I guess that's really the check-in here is there is some level of staff concern that given the current focus on housing affordability, that there's not actually the same level of desire to add additional costs to infill development in the city of Macomb. And so I would say kind of that hasn't been expressed, but I think there's an underpinning element of like, it's hard to dedicate a bunch of resources and get excited about something if there's uncertainty about whether there's still council support for an infill levy. So I would say here, if it's not a priority, I don't think you'll see it this term. I guess I'll just be honest. If this is seen as not a priority right now, it's probably going to push back until next term. If it is a priority, then we want to bring something that kind of talks in broad strokes sooner than later to get an endorsement that we're moving in the right direction with that. There is a working group that's been struck. It could even involve some level of a presentation from that working group about different options, that sort of thing. So if that's a priority, that's what that would look like.
Councillor Dallas.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Yeah, thank you for that information because for some reason in my mind, I thought it had actually been completed, 2.5 years ago. I guess I'm curious on what an average cost on a levy would be. It would vary based on the level of development, a single family versus a multifamily, and the costs just go up from there, or is it just one flat rate? That would be part of the consideration.
Yeah, that's exactly what we had talked about. Is okay, well, you can do everything from every rezoning that upzones is $5,000, or you say no, every additional unit added is a certain price, or we have talked. There's a lot of different options you can look at.
Thank you.
So please provide your input there while we move to the next item, which is we had on March 4th the discussion of planning and development fees, and they're working on those right now to bring to council for a decision. And I guess here we have it scheduled for Q2 2024 right now. If council confirms that that's a priority, that is the schedule we will continue with. If you say, well, I'm less on that right now, this will still be coming back this year. It'll be more of a Q4 or maybe beginning of next year if you change the priority too low. At the beginning of the term, council received a presentation on the Clean Energy Improvement Program. This is what's called PACE legislation in the United States. And council had elected to take a approach that was, let's see how this is working in some other municipalities rather than jumping on being the first one's trying it. And we had said, oh, that's great. We'll bring back a possible implementation plan in Q4 2025. Council had endorsed that at the time. Wanted to see, but it's actually coming up to 2025. Is that something you still want to see next year? Or is that something we should check in with the new council and see if it's a priority with them before putting any resources towards it? All right, if you can move to page 12, the coordinator Balbono, that's building the community, and it's about long-term sustainable service delivery. The first area here is efficiently delivering core services. With the first one being the identification of inflow and infiltration sources and volumes that are affecting the city's wastewater collection system. So if you council remember, City of Macomb actually returns more wastewater than it buys in water. And so there is some inflow and infiltration affecting the city's wastewater collection system. We have been doing some sanitary flow monitoring. It's complete. They're working on the analysis right now. And whether you want, I guess, on the low end of things, we'll take those internally, prepare some capital expenditure program in the wastewater program, wastewater system, and present that to you during your 10-year capital plan for implementation over the next 10 years. If it's a high priority, then we're going to bring back a report specifically about what we found with the sanitary flow monitoring and really focus on creating some short-term wins with some infrastructure improvement projects in the short term.
So, Director Thompson, correct me if I'm wrong, some of the data seem to indicate that because of the low rainfall year we had, that our infiltration was down substantially to the point where we were closer to about 100% of our water consumption. Is that close?
For 2023, that happened to be the case, yeah.
Right. So with that information in mind, that would suggest we're, I think it was up to 20%, which is substantial throughout the year, which occurs only in the summer months, of course, or the non-freezing months. Does that give us enough information to be able to move ahead with some strategies, or is there still use for additional data when it comes to flow rates and that kind of thing?
That information certainly helps correlate and confirm that there is a issue with infiltration. It doesn't tell us where it is. And that's what but the monitoring and the analysis that's undergoing right now will hone in on which areas of the city are seeing that infiltration and what the next steps should be to narrow it down to a specific pipe segment or a specific block that will then turn into a capital program or an infrastructure improvement program that CAO Gowdy was referring to. So it's an important factor, but it's not enough to turn it into a capital program to improve it or reduce the water consumption, the influence.
But we do have that next. What you're talking about confirms that overall there's an I&I thing, like issue.
Mm-hmm.
We have done the data collection to determine where it is, like to answer that second important part of the question. It's just being analyzed right now, but there isn't more data gathering that's required.
Okay. Because the thing that I wrestle with is fine. So we know that that's where it's coming from. And obviously then we're going to pay more on heavy rainfall years in our wastewater charges if they're not addressed. However, if we do choose to address them, theoretically we could gain an additional 15 or 20% overall, perhaps in a best case scenario. Without some sort of an indication of dollars involved, it makes it a hard thing to justify continuing with it.
So that is an important step that we have been working with some specialists on this. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I was shaking my head. I don't even think 15 to 20%. I mean, you could do it if you spent millions and millions of dollars, but there's a tipping point at which a certain amount of leakage in the system is always going to be there. There's no way to get rid of that, and for the water system. And conversely, a certain amount of inflow and infiltration is always going to be present. Creating a watertight system is not the goal. You just want the water leaking in to be cheaper, dealing with that to be cheaper than dealing with it with an infrastructure solution. You want to have kind of, and so that is work that's happening to say, well, which dollars are worth spending, which infrastructure improvements are worth doing, because you're always going to have some leaking in.
So then, to be blunt about it, which priority rating would suggest continue on with the current path that we're at and continuing with the work?
I believe there is one that's like number 3 on your what? I don't have it right in front of me. Yes, number 3, medium priority, is going to keep it right where it's at and continue the existing path.
Thank you. Councillor Dallas.
Thank you, Mayor Casey. I guess when you're asking about financially, even if there was an opportunity to reduce it by 10% from, I think it was, I can't even remember, the number was 1,300 or something for water bought and water returned in the wastewater. If that was megaliters, or, but to me, that sounds like if a 10% reduction on that from wastewater would be $300,000 a year. And so like that's a long-term investment to be just paying for water when, so that's just the way I'm seeing it. Is there is a financial incentive as well as to continue with this for sure. So
I think there's no question about that. It's just that from what we're hearing, I think that it could cost $10 or $20 million to accomplish that savings. That's a bit of unknown, I know, but it'll be a big number.
Well, that's exactly what we want to see. If you're saving 300,000 and it costs you 3 million to fix that, that's probably a worthwhile investment. But if it's 20 million, you just 300,000 is the acceptable loss then, because you can't justify that kind of a return. Right. So once you've put in your answer there, I'm going to move on to the next one, which is complete water system lead testing and create a plan for compliance. 2023, we did complete lead testing and no lead services were found. 2024 is compiled, ready for a May start. There is legislation that requires municipalities to proceed down this path and take steps. We're certainly meeting that legislation, and that's kind of the baseline over here. If you say, actually, it's a really high priority, I want to make sure that no Lacombe residents are being exposed to lead, we have the ability to test, then rate it a high priority, and we'll certainly look to expand the areas that we look at each year and really aggressively look for identification of lead services.
Obviously, I misheard you. I thought you said the testing had been completed.
We do it in specific areas.
Thank you.
Over a number of years. Could you tell me or talk to about how many number of years? And we certainly started with those where we thought there was likely to be some. Maybe tell us about that.
Yeah, so the way the guidelines are written from the province are that you do a spot check of locations that are built in the era that where lead would be present. And if there is lead present in your tests there, then you go one level deeper and do another set of tests in that area. And so when we're doing our spot checks, we have to do so many a year. I think it's in the range of 20 or so homes a year within these older era locations. And then if we do find something, there's another level of testing we have to do. And so that's what we're continuing to do to meet the testing guidelines from the province. So we're just complying with the minimum required legislative requirements for this.
And certainly Public Works has been doing that upgrading and replacement since the early 80s.
Not necessarily on the services themselves. There's no actual obligation for a municipality to ensure services are lead free. You, at a minimum, could go in and replace the municipality's portion of the lead service and tell the homeowner, hey, by the way, your half is lead. We replaced our half. See you later. That hasn't been the approach we've been taking, but I would say the municipality's focus since the 80s would largely typically be on the mains, not necessarily the services themselves.
And so on those spot checks that have been carried out over the last several years, how many instances has there been when the levels have been in excess of current guidelines?
3 or 4. And the testing does
3
occur
or 4
in the 3 or 4
total or per
per
year,
total.
last 10 years or what?
total. It's
Total.
It's yeah, it's not
Okay.
it's not very frequently, but the testing occurs in a person's home, and so the presence of lead could come from not only the main or the service line, it could come from fixtures from within the home, and so that is the testing requirement for this type of testing. It's right at the consumer level, so we often go right into the kitchen or ask the homeowner to fill up a jar that we in their kitchen, and we take that to the lab for testing.
Right, but to say that it could come from the main, I don't understand how that would be possible. If it came from the main, then everybody that was on that main would test positive too, would they not?
Yeah, sorry, I misspoke. Theoretically, yeah, it could be anywhere along the chain where there's lead, and my point is to say that it's a combination of sources from the city side and the private side that lead could be coming from, and the subsequent testing that is required kind of roughly indicates where about in that service line the lead is present, but it doesn't necessarily, like, we would have to expose the line and physically see the lead in the ground in order to verify where it is exactly.
Fair enough, but there again, to be reasonable, chances are it's on the service line on private property. Otherwise, there would be far more that would show up if it was a main light item.
Yeah, I would say that I'm not aware of lead mains, but it could be lead services on public property.
Okay.
It could be municipally owned service line portions that are lead.
But given that these have been removed as they were found on ongoing projects since the early 1980s, at least, and the numbers would back that up. There's only been 4 in the last several years that have been found to have detectable levels or levels in excess of recommendations. This is not a public alarm type situation. This is not a huge occurrence.
No, I would agree. We would say it's a huge occurrence, but our path is following the compliance pathway outlined by Alberta Environment. And at this point, council could indicate, go beyond, go quicker, be more aggressive with your detection program. And that's the kind of feedback we're looking for tonight.
Thank you. Councillor Dallas.
Thank you. I guess, do we have records for, because I know some people are hesitant to replace services, and then, so once we've detected it, is there a way for people looking to purchase these homes to know if this lead testing has been completed and to know what the service is, the service material?
They would if they asked the city specifically for that.
Okay.
But it's not something that we would normally hand out
No.
or disclose. Not that it's hiding or anything, but it's not a part of a normal business activity of the city to advise potential purchasers. If they ask, we would tell them.
Thank you.
Right, the next one is optimize garbage collection routes. Consultant has been hired, work is scheduled for 2024. It's largely in progress, work that's in progress. We actually had hoped to have Tetra Tech do this. Council might remember, like 4 years ago or something, right? You remember that? And it didn't come together. So it is coming together now. Again, this one, the bandwidth is pretty small. it's underway. The contract's in place and we are optimizing them. So provide your feedback, but it's not going to change a lot of what we do on our end. And that's just the nature of some of these items that are underway. Next one, yeah, you do have a lot of opportunity to provide feedback. It's the creation of a green space replacement plan. Director Lapointe and I for years have thought, man, wouldn't it be great if instead of just going in as we're replacing these playgrounds, if we could somehow confirm with the community a playground is what you want. You know, maybe you want tennis courts or pickleball or a skate park or something. There's community gardens. When you're looking at the cost of these playgrounds, they're big investments to just make because there's always been a playground there. And so we've always had this kind of pipe dream of making something that isn't just, I guess, playgrounds as green space investments, that maybe there could be more than that. So if it's a priority for council, a green space replacement plan, then that's something we're gonna do. We're gonna come up with a process for engaging the local neighborhood about replacement of infrastructure in the green space within their neighborhood. If it's not a priority for council, that's no problem. It's replacing like for like, and just making sure we're keeping up to date on CSA standard equipment and that sort of thing.
So a bit of a loaded question on that one. Is this a huge task load item? Because it seems to make sense to me to put our limited resources into something that those that are using particular community green space into something that they would want. And perhaps it may be a playground. However, it might not be in every case. Like, is this a 6-month thing or a 5-year thing? What are we talking here?
I don't think that creating the mechanism for doing it is that hard, because I think you can just send a letter to everybody in that neighborhood or within a certain distance of the playground. I think the heavy lift is that you will get divergent feedback. No matter what, you're going to have a bunch of people that say, well, I don't use that playground. I don't care about that green space. I don't want to spend 300 grand on it. You have people that say, community gardens, that'd be awesome. That would be for me. There'd be a bunch of families that say, well, I bought here because there's a playground and you owe me that playground. And so I wouldn't say the mechanism is the hard part. The hard part is, are you prepared, or are we prepared to ask a question where we know we will get a non-uniform answer and then make a decision out of that feedback? That I would say is the bigger uncertainty that's always kind of prevented us from taking the step, is that you are asking a question. I guess it's easy to just 300 grand playground, that's done. Not to minimize the, sorry, I know there's a bunch of work that goes into it, selecting and that, but it's pretty straightforward and you don't have to defend that decision to anyone. If you replace a playground for a ball diamond, you're going to have to defend that. We, not you, we are going to have to defend that decision as to how we came to it.
Thank you. Councillor Connick.
Thank you. Just a comment on that. I think it's a nice idea, but when my kids were little, we went to playgrounds that weren't in our neighborhood. In fact, some of the best playgrounds weren't in our neighborhood. So I think that consultation with the local neighborhood, at the end of the day, I think is insufficient, to be honest. I mean, because you're missing out if you remove a playground that happens to be the favorites of the Basque community. I don't know. It's a nice idea. But.
Your feedback about how you feel. The next one is a best practice that has been introduced into the home a couple of years now, and completion of the water up. That's where our water loss occurring, or the filling loss. system losses. Let's go back to that. Are these losses worth the chase? Are these losses best actions? This is the generally called. So if it's not a priority for council, we won't do that. It remains a priority.
So given that water is certainly in the news and important lately, do we have any kind of reference for water usage amongst communities in Alberta and how we rate?
So one of the challenges with rating water losses across municipalities is there isn't a set data, a standard in how we do that. And a percentage and how one community measures that could be different from another community to another community. And so what the audit does is it is a standard way that has been developed by the American Water Works Association to do just that. It's the recommended way, and it's the way that's adopted by many jurisdictions in the United States, Halifax, and very few in Canada. But we believe we're leaders in this area by adopting this standard. And by conducting these audits year over year so that we can more easily compare water losses across municipalities and across utilities, and that we're advocating for the adoption of the standard amongst more and more municipalities so that we can compare.
The next item is the development of an AI policy for council's consideration. So many municipalities and other organizations are struggling with this, of how much to allow their staff to use AI, how to disclose that, how to make sure private information is protected when using AI for municipal work. And the city of Lacombe is no different. We have a patchwork of AI use amongst different departments and services. There's no cohesive guidance currently in place that provides council's direction to administration on where they see appropriate uses for AI, if any. If this is not a priority, we continue with responding to things as they come out and using best judgment and our existing policy framework. If this is a priority for council, then we move ahead with an official AI policy adopted by council that provides clear direction to municipal staff on when it's acceptable or not acceptable to use artificial intelligence. The next item is an information technology policy. We currently have a policy that's been in place for some time. And of course, information technology has advanced pretty rapidly over the last 5 to 10 years. So we are working on this right now. We've got one of the administrative directives finalized and in a new template. It's under review by the managers group. We have 4 more to go through. I would say high priority for this would be getting this work done in 2024 and making sure the city's governance framework on information technology is current and best practices within 2024. Not being a priority, we'll continue to work on it to make sure that the city's interests are protected. And I would say you would see that extending out into 2025 and probably into the new term even. The next one is increasing accessibility of city standards. So we actually right now are developing an RFP to look at creating accessibility standards. So that would be just standard guidelines for when we're creating new buildings or new infrastructure, concrete access ways, that sort of thing. What will be included, what won't be included? Are we accommodating tactile feedback, for example, at crossings, maybe only in the downtown or throughout the community, and just looking at what the city wants to do to make sure it's accessible for all residents. High priority means that this is something that will be prioritized by the Lacoma and District Recreation and Culture Board and staff internally. Lower priority means we'll be relying largely on external consultants to move this work along as they're able to. It won't be an urgent thing for us. Improving online access to city services, programs, and engagement opportunities is something that we've looked at. So we have some online bill payment software and our business licensing. We're looking at potentially moving ahead with utility payments in the coming year, and looking just to make sure that those products are working as expected. Implementation is underway. Right now, I would say we're on track for utility payments to be being made late next year. If this is a priority for council, we would reprioritize other things and move that timeline ahead. I know that the mayor and I have talked about, for example, making sure that billing defaults to electronic billing and that it's a request and an extra fee to get hard copy bills, for example. Under our current system, that's very difficult to do, but it is something we're moving ahead slowly with. Okay. The next one is fairly internal, but it is something we want to know or want you to know that we're dealing with. And that's our recreation software integration with our accounting software. It's many municipalities, unfortunately, are dealing with this. This Perfect Mind software, booking software, is like a virtual monopoly in the field. And it's just having real issues that is requiring a lot of manual work by staff at all of our facilities every month right now. And so we really, this has actually been taking quite a bit of staff time, and this is more to let you know that that's happening than it is to say whether or not we should be trying to work towards resolution. We are trying to work towards resolution. The ultimate, if you said, no, this is a really high priority, we could go out and see if there is custom software to be had. I don't think you should do that, but if you give it a lower priority, it's something that we'll continue to work on. Perfect Mind has been in place in the municipality for 6 years, I was going to say, and we've been dealing with them the whole time. So I don't think it's going to get done in the next year if it's maintained priority. The next is transmitting or moving the city's data management system from a locally housed hard drive, hard disk type system to an online cloud-based system, SharePoint. And right now we have completed a number of departments, a lot of departments. We are moving planning and development right now, and that should be done hopefully here right away. If this is deemed a high priority, we would ask IT staff to focus on completing the SharePoint migration as soon as possible. If it's not something that council sees as one of their immediate priorities, we'll continue doing it at the speed we have been. The first department to be migrated was in 2022. Yeah, you think 2022? 2022, let's say. And we're 3/4 of the way through in 2024. So that gives you an idea of the scale of the project.
So I expect most councils wondering, are the resources in place for this to continue over the next few years? and come to some sort of satisfactory end game to where it's all on the cloud service, or like, I guess I'm struggling to see the advantage of all of a sudden making this huge priority. We got to have it done yesterday. What's that going to do for us?
Yeah.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor Creasy. It is definitely an ongoing project. We have been working on it for quite some time. The resources, we did use an outside contractor to start the project and to get us set up on a normal pattern with each department. And then we have moved that internal to our IT staff. And yeah, we definitely have the expertise and the staff in place to manage it for sure.
With a reasonable expectation over the next few years that all departments will be online?
We do have the majority of our departments online already, so it's just continuing on.
Very good. Thanks.
Next is planning for adequate transportation options within the community. Number one is to explore the demand and viability for future public transportation. So the Rural Transit Solutions Fund has been open to reapplications, and I know Director Lapointe has been working on getting an application ready to go. I think we're ready to send it in, just waiting a signature. And so I guess maintaining the priority would look like waiting to see what that grant application is and then bringing in an outside consultant if successful. High priority would say, well, even if the grant application isn't successful, bring me back another option for moving that ahead. The next item is an updated taxi bylaw for council's consideration. We have completed an administrative review. Revisions will be brought to council for consideration right now in Q3 of 2024. However, if you'd like us to spend time on other things that you see as a higher priority, let us know so, and we'll push this back into 2025. So we talked about the South Connector functional plan earlier this evening. Right now, in the summer, we're planning to bring you, with our consultant, a report that outlines the findings and the finally selected option, and to get that out into the public so that we can start talking about it publicly. Higher priority would mean get it here as soon as possible, early summer. Lower priority says, well, this is a 20-year thing anyway. Make sure you're focused on the high priority things, I tell you, not necessarily, this. All right, we're moving into the final area here, which is supporting the community. The first area of division there is supporting expansion of community programming through partnerships. And the first item is one we have underway right now. It's an inventory and gap analysis of recreation opportunities, in the city. And that is underway for a report back to council in Q4 2024. High priority would say, make sure we're engaging absolutely as many people as we possibly can and make it a thoroughly exhaustive list. Maintaining the current process would be continue with the surveying and stakeholder engagement and bring us in Q4 2024 a list of things, of opportunities that we could look at supporting here in the community. Not hearing anything, I'm going to move to number 2. So Mayor Creasy, we're just on number 2, which is strengthen community partnerships to expand recreation and social offerings in the community. Here, this is sort of a tough one. It's the Community Builder Partnership Fund is how we see delivering this. You have made some significant changes there. We're seeing great things come out of those changes. I would say, if this is something you tell us that's a high priority for me, then when we bring you, for example, the 2023 surplus, we're going to include some options there for making one-time contributions out of those surplus funds into the community builder partnership to make it available for things that are identified in the inventory and gap analysis. If you say, no, it's not an urgent priority for me, then we're just going to keep the funding levels the same and not look for one-time opportunities to add in funds there. Number 3 is the completion of joint use planning agreements with area school boards. Draft of the JUPA is actually ready and we are reviewing it. Provincial deadline is in 2025. We've drafted the JUPAs in consultation with STARS and Wolf Creek Public Schools. And I'm not sure that there's a lot of whether it's a high or low priority at this point. It's largely actually with the school divisions that we're waiting for. But I would say if it is a high priority, we will just make sure that we are following up with them regularly and giving our best foot to expediting responses when they have questions. Excuse me. The next item is related to the partner services inventory that we talked about earlier. It's a component of it, and that's the development of a library lease with the Mary C. Moore Library at the Lacombe Memorial Center. There hasn't actually been a lease in place since they were located there. And the board has requested that it would be great to have a lease for a variety of reasons. It would be nice to know the value of the lease and the obligations. And so that is something that right now we've got targeting Q4 2024. If council says, well, they've been without a lease forever, what's the rush? Then 2024 or even Q1 2025 is a possibility. If council says, well, no, that partner services inventory sounded good, and this is a crucial component of it, and the board has asked for it, so as much as it might not have been needed before, it is needed now, then we'll move up, priority from Q4 to Q3 or Q2 for a draft lease, and probably engage our legal counsel to help us do so.
Councillor Dallas.
Thank you. As I sit on the library board, I'm not asking for people to say move this into a high priority and get this done immediately, but I would ask that you consider maintaining it on its current course so that this can happen, as it was just there was value in it for future budget planning and knowing what improvements would need to be done and what would be the responsibility of the library. So thank you.
The next item is the application of a Alberta Community Partnership Grant to the feasibility of a regional recreation facility. Council talked about this at the February 5th council meeting and directed that we refer it to a tri-party meeting with the ICF IDP committee of the City of Lacombe, Town of Black Falls, and Lacombe County. We are waiting to hear back from Lacombe County. Black Falls is waiting until Lacombe County makes their decision, which is in the summer. So I don't actually know what the difference between high priority and low will mean in this in the short term, because we're just waiting. I would say if it is a high priority of council, then that's something we'd make sure is on the front burner whenever we're talking with our partners. And we would want to take a lead role in leading that feasibility study and the application. If it's not an urgent priority right now, we'll let them go through their process and try and see if one of them is willing to take a leadership role as the managing partner in the application. Okay. The next item is joint advocacy with the Wolf Creek Public Schools. Right now, we've got a meeting tentatively set for 2025. So this would be a biannual every 2 year meeting. If council sees this as a higher priority, then we would look to see if we could meet with them in the fall. Moving on to the next page. This is a notice of motion that passed recently at the February 26th meeting. And it is a capital project profile. The development of a capital project profile for use of asphalt millings for Missioner Park, the east-west component of the Missioner Park parking lot where the farmers market takes place. Currently, we have this on track to bring you a project profile in Q3 of 2024. So with the regular capital budget review, one of the items you would review would be this millings project. However, if council sees this as a higher priority, we would want to bring it back sooner, maybe in the summer, as a standalone item to see if council wanted to include that either in the 2025 capital project or look to advance it into the fall of 2024.
I was just curious, do we have opportunity to maybe be a little more efficient with upcoming work that may have asphalt millings available? They're already on the truck, so to speak. Why not make more sense to do it then as opposed to using stockpiles that I'm led to believe the majority of which have been allocated for the operations center and other public facilities?
Yeah, could you maybe talk to us about how much millings are expected from this year's capital project? Is this something there's going to be a major amount? 2024, sorry.
Well, certainly there's a capital program that consists of repaving a number of roads. You're right that the milling, the stockpile that is at the current public or the future public works site, we want to use as much as we can to on site to abate dust and kind of manage drainage that way. But you're also right about the efficiency being gained by coordinating the transport and the processing of millings with the capital works program. So they're only loaded up on one truck and then transported at the same time. And so the trade-off there is advancing it to be a priority would mean the earliest it's either we spend a bunch of money and lose that cost efficiency and just make that a dedicated effort, a standalone project to utilize those millings for the Michener Park, or we put in place a strategy, let's say, so that when the opportunity arises where it is efficient to deploy millings at Michener Park within a capital works program, that we deploy it at that time. And so I can say that we'll present a number of options for council's consideration when we bring forward this report. But I guess our baseline option would be if council wants to do this, that we would coordinate it with the capital works program, a future capital works program. Once we know how much millings are required at Michener Park, we know the level of standard that's required, we have more information on kind of the level of effort that is needed to bring the millings there, process them, and compact them in a way that meets council's goals.
Okay, so as we all, this was a priority for Councillor Gullickson, which is fine. I think it would be a nice thing to work towards. For me, however, I don't see the value in spending a great deal of extra money utilizing those resources that have already been allocated. However, if there's an opportunity to use future millings, quite honestly, I don't even care if it takes a couple, 2 or 3 seasons, as long as we're moving towards improving that area, I think that's a reasonable outcome for something that, sure, it's got some other benefits for parking and whatnot, but I mean, really, if we're looking at the market, we're talking about one day or one partial day over the course of 4 months kind of thing. So to prioritize it over a civic operations center, I don't think is reasonable, in my opinion. Something that's used 5 or 6 days a week, it just doesn't make sense in this case for me. I would like to see us move that direction, but in a more efficient way. Councillor Conick.
Thank you, Mayor Chrissy. I could probably save this question for the end, but I'm just thinking about it now. For any of these, how do you use the results of, like, for library lease? 2 say it's high, 2 say it's medium, 3 say it's low. Like, do you majority rules, or how do you, I guess I'm just curious, as I go through this, that question keeps running through the back of my head. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a bit of an interpretation game. So the results you're giving us here are actually going to create these things. It's a Microsoft trademarked thing called a Likert that provides a graph that kind of visually shows, and we'll share it with you, where council as a whole sees the need to move it up, has tolerance for moving it back, or kind of right in the middle is fine with where it's at. And so we're going to look at that and then match it up with capacity. And not real capacity, it's what we perceive as our capacity will be over the remaining 18 months, and then try and move it around. So there isn't like I wish that, trust me, I do wish there was a quantitative way to calculate it out and say, that's how it's done. But it's a real interpretive game.
Councillor Dallas.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I guess, so back on this asphalt millings. So, I guess you're rating a priority for this, but we haven't, like the notice of motion just came to say, bring us information on what this would look like, not that we would be doing this, so.
Correct, and that's all so just to reiterate, if you say, it's a high priority, this is a high priority, then what we would want to do is bring back a report, standalone, that says, okay, here's what this would look like. And one of the options that you'll want to consider is on the 2024 Capital Works project, sending all the millings over to that site, knowing that, as Mayor Creasy said, it might be 2 or 3 years of stockpile, because you probably want to grind them over the winter. We've ran into that before. It's much easier to grind them in the winter so it doesn't gum up the teeth. If it's, I'm fine with whenever, then we're going to bring you a project profile with the Capital Works project that might say 2025, 2026, and 2027, you send everything over there. And in 2028, we have a program to do the whole thing, or it might be, plus or minus a couple of years. So high priority means standalone, could start in 2024. Maintaining the current priority says, I'd like to consider it, but I don't need it to start in 2024. That's not, I see that as unnecessarily rushing it, and rushing adds cost to things. I don't want to pay extra more than I have to. It's sort of a range. And again, you're right. You're not endorsing, I want to do this or not. It's just about the plan. Okay, the next one is a presentation of an updated emergency management plan for council's consideration. Work plan has been developed, work is assigned, and it's currently set to conclude in 2025. Higher priority would see that moved back from Q3 2025. Lower priority will target Q3 2025, but it could slip into the next term of council. Moving to the next item is an updated fire services agreement with Macomb County, council's consideration. Which one did I miss? No, that's the one I had just gone through. No problem. They all blend together. It's not just you. The fire services agreement. So this is just the building. It's just the building agreement. Councilor Director Piche and I talked about this earlier. We do have a fire services agreement. The equipment agreement is complete. The building agreement, actually, most of it is known, but until we have a site, of course, we can't complete anything.
the
So,
fire services is substantially complete.
Back in August was when we had everything signed off.
so we'll be changing this from fire services agreement generally to just the building component that's still outstanding. I'm not sure that there's a lot of opportunity for input here. Once we have the site, we'll need to have an agreement with the county before we can start building the fire hall. So the timing is fairly confined. But this is something that's going to take a bit of time for us in the coming year. The next item is a proactive community standards awareness education campaign. I think I should say campaign there. And so this would be just really promoting some of the changes to community standards that have happened and the traffic bylaw over the last year. If you see it as a high priority, then you're going to see that at every trade show, farmers market thing, and on the city's social media feeds frequently. If you see it as, no, it's business as usual, then it will appear as occasional board and occasional post on social media. I'm moving to page 22. And page 24 is nothing, so we're getting close. All right, the next one is to continue work with CP Rail on issues of railway standards and whistle cessation. We do have whistle cessation at 3 of 5 crossings. The 2A12 crossing is not going to be achieved without significant upgrades at the 2A12 intersection. So low priority, I guess, looks like business as usual. High priority, I would say we would try and tackle some of these railway standards issues, and so look at trying to get some renewed movement on issues of the rail ties and the telegraph wires coming into the city. The whistle cessation item is really on a kind of a set timeline now. The next item is the fire service level agreement and scope of practice. This is an agreement through bylaw and policy that actually the fire department defines its service level with council as to what sort of their shoot time will be and some of their service provision within the municipality. With the adoption of a new bylaw and policy, these can be worked on. Right now, we have them targeting the late fall, but if council sees this as a higher priority, we could move that back into the summer, or a lower priority, we'd move that into 2025. And then the next one is kind of the same thing. It's the bylaw component of the scope of practice. So it's following right after that prior one. Number 7 is a flood study that's happening with Lacombe County, or not Lacombe County, I'm sorry, the province of Alberta. They are looking at updating the hydrology assessment for the area. It is something that's the responsibility of Alberta Environment and Parks. As it stands right now, we've kind of provided them data and then we wait to hear back from them. It's not really an active participation thing. However, if it's a high priority for council, then we would engage them and ask to be involved meaningfully and just provide pressure to make sure that it's happening at a reasonable speed. I think otherwise it is likely that this project will extend into 2025, not because of the city, just it sometimes takes the province a while to gather the data and analyze the data, especially when they're using third parties as they are in this case.
So would that flood study include the state of the Wolf Creek?
No, it won't. Just so you know, we have been talking with them quite a bit, trying to keep on them about whose responsibility that is, how to make sure it's being met. They have not been super responsive with information. Whether they are deliberately not understanding our requests and objectives, or whether it's a tactic, I'm not sure, but it has been going on since like last summer, maybe before that even. Anyway, that's not this though, but we are on the other thing too. On page 23, the first item under supporting a healthy community is the completion of an inventory and gap analysis of current social services in the city. So this is the social needs and prioritization exercise that is underway. Council had a bit of a workshop on March 4th. The project had kicked off on the 23rd, and consultations are underway right now. I believe council is being invited to one-on-one opportunities for consultation as well. And right now we are on target for Q3 2024. There's not really any way to advance that timeline without sacrificing kind of the project's thoroughness. If it is less of a priority for council, there's not a lot of the contract is signed, it's in play. A lot of the consultation sessions have actually already taken place or are scheduled, and so I'm not sure there's actually a lot of wiggle room here about priority. It will be coming to you in 2024. The next one is the Elizabeth Lake Stabilization Project and Trail Project. So we did get an endorsement from Lacombe County for us to approach some of the landowners that are affected by this. And so we have initiated contact. We haven't met with them yet. And we're hopeful that there is a path forward for this project, because it's kind of annoying it's been 6 or 7 years in the making. And I don't know, struggle with those long-term projects that don't seem to go anywhere. So we would like to see this either officially dead and it just can't move ahead, that's fine, or a path to move ahead. Right now, we have been waiting for Lacombe County, but we're fairly passively engaging these residents. It hasn't been a huge priority. If council says this is actually a huge priority, then we'll make sure those happen over the summer and really try to find a path to make it happen. If it's not a major priority, we'll wait to hear back from them and then just proceed as we hear from the affected landowners. In 2023, June, council gave us some direction on preparing land use bylaw amendments for soft-sided structures in residential areas, and not just amendments, but really to consider an enforcement strategy on these. Right now, we've been kind of delayed with this and are planning to bring something back in 2024, but late 2024. We want to know if this is still a priority for council, if that meets your expectations, 2024, or if you'd like to see it advanced and actually say, this is a priority. We do want to see this. It's an issue in our community. The last item on the existing list, and we do have 3 more afterwards, but the last item here is an land use bylaw amendment talking about allowable signage in residential zones. So this arose out of an enforcement action we had earlier this year. We did have an open forum presentation from a gentleman who was looking to, well, he had a sign issue that was assigned him. But council expressed a desire to look at a path for compliance to have signs that express support or opposition to a particular idea or movement. Maybe like I support nurses, or I don't support the federal government. I love pipelines, that sort of an idea. And we were given a direction to prepare land use bylaw amendments that would talk about signage with a maximum sign size of 600 millimeters by 600 millimeters in residential areas, a single sign on a residential lot. Currently, we have that proposed for a first reading coming to you in 2024 and final passage by the end of the year. So same thing, if that's a higher priority, let us know and we'll try and move that up. If it's a lower priority, no problem. We will work that in when we have the capacity to do so.
And that was coming to us when anyway?
The first reading is going to come in summer 2024, late summer. I forgot to put in here, late summer.
I was going to say it was pretty close. So, okay, thank you. Summer. Councillor Connick.
Yeah, and with respect to this arose out of an honest motion that I brought forward, and I don't, if it becomes a low priority, so be it, it can come next year. I just think with respect to any of these that are come out of an honest motion, I think it's only fair that they be resolved prior to the end of this council's term. Like they can't, I get it, this one could go on next, whatever, but I think there has to be a resolution before we're all done, because it came out of the notes.
Okay, so there are 3 remaining items in your survey there. There were 3 submissions from the council invitation we sent for new items or new topics. Because of the mix-up with the forms, we had sent that one out a couple of times before, but I did also want to offer an opportunity if council wanted to discuss 1 or 2 items that don't appear here. We're happy to take that input, but I do think there are 3 items on the list that council did submit through the form itself that should be discussed. I don't actually have it in front of me. Would you mind, Councillor Hibbs, if I? So the first was future planning for additional recreation facilities, and I took this one to be related not just to the regional recreation facility that we already talked about, but to look at what does the city of Lacombe need within its own borders for additional recreation facilities. If the submitter wanted to provide additional flavor to that, that would be the time. And otherwise.
And was that intended to be in line with the recreations board's plan they had for their requests for other facilities so far, or how?
I suspect that it is sort of in consultation with that, but I see Councillor Dallas is also willing to speak to it. So maybe he can.
Councillor Dallas.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Yes, so this was from me, and I guess I submitted these before knowing what the rest of the survey would look like and what other line items there would be to choose. And so, yeah, I think this is not directly related to the tri-regional proposal. This is more based on our gap analysis and some other community needs that have been brought forward before that's completed. So that was just, yeah, I wasn't sure how this was going to look, so that's what I wrote in there, and now we can select a rating based on that. And so I apologize that it's not more informative, but
good.
Yeah.
Councillor Hoekstra, did you have something as well? Same thing. Councillor Connick.
Well, and I mean, if you want specifics, pickleball. We've talked about it, and I think it needs to be something that we should look at with a little more serious note. I was prepared to bring back Councillor Hooks' notice of motion, but I'll let it go. If we can, yeah, if that's what this will encompass. Thank you, Councillor Dallas, for that. But that's, yeah, I didn't submit any suggestions because I misread the email, but that would have been one that I would have submitted in line with this. Thank you. And sorry, Mayor Chris. And with all due respect to rec board or whatever, that's all well and good that there may be something coming from them, but I still think that these type of predators are also important if they come from council. Thank you.
So go ahead and provide your feedback there. Thank you very much. The next one is reviewing how long it takes to complete projects and creating more effective timelines. Specifically here mentioned were city facilities. I would say that's probably the fire hall and the public works, and pathways. And I'm inferring that that would be like the midway center pathway. And I took this to be, hey, is there other ways of delivering projects that can follow a more defined timeline? Or is administration running out of capacity for project management that we need to bring in some external consultants to support delivery? Or how can we move these complex projects along in kind of a more step-by-step fashion to make sure we're not, sometimes it feels like wandering around, to try to get projects done. And I think people have felt that I have to at times. But of course, again, if the submitter would like to provide some additional narrative on it, that would sure help their counselors understand. And I remember what the last one was.
Go ahead, Councillor Dallas.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Yeah, so thank you, CAO Gowdy. Your interpretation on that is excellent, so I appreciate that. Yeah, I just, it's my first term, and I know the Public Works had started before I was here, but it's taken some time, and the fire hall is another great example. We're looking at the city hall renovations or whatever, and I know some of those are budget related as well, but I think some more defined timelines and ways for both administration and council to meet these timelines would be a very nice addition to moving these ahead.
So as you are moving through these, or actually, I'm sorry, there's one more yet, eh?
Yes. So if you could provide the rating on that item. The last one is future planning for replacement of City Hall. And I think that one's fairly self-explanatory, but let's just speak to it.
Okay. I was just going to say beyond that. Oh, go ahead.
Well, thank you again. This was from me. And so I think we've seen in previous meetings that there is an appetite for renovations. And so this just kind of came about. Well, if we're not, we don't have an appetite for that, but there does seem to be a demand for City Hall, then I would like to see this as part of our future planning. Thank you.
Thank you. As you're completing these ones, I would suggest or hope that you go through the groupings from previous and make sure that you haven't overextended our capacity as an organization and have far too many high priorities or any one group, and try and keep them realistic. Not to suggest that there's any items in here that are not important, but we need to be mindful of capacity. So be genuine with your input and realistic. And then once you are satisfied with the answers, we can hit submit, I assume.
Please do. That is a key final detail. And I'll also be contacting Councillors Gullickson and Ross to ask them to complete it as well and give them the opportunity to ask me any questions about details that they need. And so we'll be bringing you back a draft updated plan for the remainder of your term. at a future meeting. I'm doubtful it will be the 22nd meeting. It will probably be the first meeting in May, but we'll see what your feedback is here. And yeah, I'm hoping it's both realistic for us and what council wants to see. It's hard to believe we're down to less than half the term left, but we are. And so I want to make sure we're as aligned for this remainder as we've been so far, so that we're really getting the things done that you want to see done.
Well, I, for one, look forward to the results. Hopefully we can get the other two counselors that are not here, their input in relatively short order, and assemble those and bring forward. It's going to be interesting to see how opinions have adjusted over time. I look forward to it. One final item of business this evening is just to go over upcoming meetings. We do have 3 listed here, and they are all regular meetings of council held here in chambers at 5:30 p.m. on each occasion as well. For Monday, April 22nd, Monday, May 13th, and Monday, May 27th. And I believe that concludes our business for this evening. Councillor Hoekstrop.
I move to adjourn.
Very good. My clock says it's 8 p.m. All those in favor? Very good, thank you.